Oh, right, it's 9:02. I think we should start, right? Because it's only meant to be 15 minutes, so we are going to start. I discovered last week something which I was very excited about, as anybody who knows me will know that I'm a huge fan, Chassid of the Alshich HaKodesh, the Holy Alshich. And I'm learning it with one of my chavrusas here in Inwood, where we live. And he asked a question which I thought was so obvious. In fact, I'd heard it many times before, but I really liked the answer. The answer was so simple. He wants to know why, at the beginning of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, Hashem Niso es Avram, Hashem tests Avram. And the elder says, well, I didn't say Niso es Abraham es Yitzchak. He tested both of them. After all, who's being killed here? And he says a very simple and very straightforward answer. For Yitzchak, it wasn't a test. A test is something that's difficult for you. A test is something that challenges you. But for Yitzchak, whose nature was to be the ultimate Eved Hashem, whatever Hashem wants to happen, that's fine by him. And if he wanted him to give up his life for him, he's willing to do it. But for Abraham, whose nature is kindness and mercifulness and concern for other people, and altruism and all those nice words, to take his son, your only son, the one you love, and kill him, that's a test. So the definition of a test is clearly when you find things very, very difficult and very challenging. And clearly, obviously, that defines perfectly the moment or the times that we find ourselves very suddenly with all sorts of change happening with exponential growth at this particular second of time. We're in very, very strange times. And that's why a very good friend of mine who suggested and put this together, who's here at the moment, pointed out that there was some gathering of Rabbonim in Lakewood, I believe it was, and one of the Rabbonim, whose name I forgot, was Rabbi Cohen. Asher, was that right? Rabbi Cohen said that maybe the learning of this particular book, the book called Shaar HaBetochon of the Chavos HaLevavos, or rather, the Chavos HaLevavos, the chapter called Shaar HaBetochon, Betochen, come to translate that in a second, then that should be what people are working at this particular moment in time. And it's a very interesting thing. It's the classic book on Betochen. Let's perhaps just consider how we would translate the word Betochen. So I think everybody here is muted, so I won't ask you because you won't be able to answer. But the question is, how would you translate the word Betochen? Ramatasiel Solomon, Zalzainer Fushleim is not very well at the moment, but the Mashgiach of Lakewood, and whom I've known for 45 years, he translates it very interestingly. Most people, if you ask them to translate Betochen, will say trust, to have trust in God. He translates it as certainty in God. And the Ramban in Nachmanides, he says that everybody who is a Baal Betochen, who has reached the level of Betochen, certainty in God, is of course a Maimin, somebody who believes in God. But not everybody who's a Maimin, not everybody who believes in God is a Baal Betochen, is certain about Hashem. To reach that level is a very, very high level indeed. And so the Shaar HaBetochon that's what it's all about, to actually build a relationship with God, to get yourself from the maybe or 90% to the 100%. That would be certainty. And the sad thing is that this book, and I certainly know this from personal experience, if I can bare my soul to all the participants here tonight, that particular book is generally a book that people discover, invest in, and turn to when they're in trouble. Now, I had dipped into it over a long career as a rabbi, and with hundreds of shiurim, in fact, thousands of shiurim sitting over there on my shelves. I'd quoted from it, but actually to go through it and read it and become familiar with it, I only did that when I really got into trouble. Oh, I should, in case you think I've done something terrible. No, we just moved to America, which is not in itself terrible, for a job that was supposed to and promised to last 3 years, and it lasted 10 months, leaving us floundering and struggling and drowning financially. And I was in a bit of a mess, I must admit. And that's when, as it were, I took it seriously. In fact, I took it so seriously that I translated it and turned it into a book called Refuah's Lev, with a new translation in English. But it's generally when we're in trouble that we turn to Shaar HaBetochon, which makes a lot of sense. It would have been much more sensible had I become familiar with the book before I was in trouble. And okay, so it'd be lovely if all of us were having this conference and learning about Shaar HaBetochon before the coronavirus came along and scared the socks off everybody. And really, I think, if you'll allow me to say, I think the fear and the panic and even the hysteria, try going to Costco and buy something at the moment to see what that's all about, is actually probably much worse than the disease itself. However, Shaar HaBetochon is where we're supposed to be concentrating on. And so for 15 minutes for the next few weeks, almost every night, except Wednesday nights when I have another at this time slot that I have to fulfill, we're going to delve into the ideas contained therein. So I have one here. This is the Shaar HaBetochon. And so there's a Pasicha on where he opens up and introduces us to the book. Now, the chapter before that is called Avodas Elokim, Shaar Avodas Elokim, where you learn to do what you're supposed to do in relationship with God, in your relationship with God. But then he says this, which is interesting. So let me read and translate just to show that I'm a properly qualified rabbi. He says, Hadover shehu nochutz la'oved ha'elokim. The thing that's absolutely necessary if you want to have a relationship with God, yosem mikol dvarim, more than any other thing, that is that you have certainty. Now we're translating betochen as certainty. You have certainty in your relationship with God in any aspect of your life. Certainty. And over the page, he says, and I just literally turned the page, then he says the following thing. Because if you invest trust even a little bit in anything else apart from God, listen, this is scary, he says, perhaps maybe you're confident in your financial situation. Interesting at the moment to see all the financial situations of so many people collapsing into dust. Or you believe in your cleverness. That will get you out of trouble. Or your physical strength. Anything else. If you believe in anything else, to some degree, in addition or apart from Hashem, Hashem removes his control, his investment in your life relative to the percentage that you trust elsewhere, which I suppose makes sense. After all, if you invest in something else, in someone else, then you're saying to God, I don't really need you to this degree. At the moment, it's actually, when you think about what's happening, then there's almost nothing that a person could say, oh, well, we can do this. Maybe we'll go to Israel till it's over. You won't get into Israel. What can we do? Financial markets are in free fall. People are being laid off left, right, and center. Everything that you could trust, that you would trust. It's, if nothing else, the coronavirus is a perfect illustration. In fact, it'd be very hard to design a better illustration of how that if you put your trust in anything else. In my translation of Shaar HaBetochon, I tell a story about my oldest son, who now is a Rosh Hashiva, a huge Talmud Chacham, and also finishing his PhD in philosophy. The sort of kid at school you hated, really. But my son said a very, very interesting thing, which I put in my book, and it was when he was a little boy, and he used to climb into my bed, or I used to climb into his bed and give him a hug before he went to sleep. He told me that he felt, a couple of years ago he told me this, he felt that nothing in the world could possibly harm him. His dad, his Scottish dad, was with him and would protect him from everything. And it was a very sweet and beautiful compliment he paid me. However, it's a compliment which is obviously flawed, because I'm sure he felt the exact same thing about his mommy. And the only thing is, mommy passed away from cancer after 5 years. Who can you trust except Hashem? At the moment, we're having a beautiful illustration of every single facet of society. You can't trust it. It's all falling to bits. Government's scrambling, doctors are scrambling, everybody is scrambling about and not really knowing what to do. The idea really is, by the way, that you can trust people. I'm not saying that. He's not saying that. He's not saying you can't trust. Everybody here, I think, in this group knows me. If you needed help and I could give help, I think you could trust me that I would try and give the help. But don't put your trust in me. I might not be able to deliver. I might think I've got money to be able to lend you or give you, and I don't. I might think that I've got efforts that I can expend on you, and suddenly something else happens, or become not well, or whatever. And then I can't. But you can put your trust in Hashem. But if you diverge, if you go off in a different direction and put your trust to any degree on anything or anybody else, then Hashem withdraws his control of your life relative to the amount you've asked him or you've invested elsewhere. So if you believe in Hashem, really quite a lot, 80%, but 20% you believe in medicine, and science, and Donald Trump will look after us or whatever it is. Well, then Hashem leaves you there and leaves you that percentage in control. But one thing we have to make quite clear, in saying you have to have betochen in Hashem, you have to have certainty in Hashem, it's not blind faith. It's not faith. It's not faith. Betochen is not faith. It's certainty. Faith is believing. I believe. You believe in something you can't prove. Betochen is certainty. Certainty means you can prove it. So it's not faith, and it's not blind faith. It's certainty. And that's an important, very important idea. And you'll see in this very short gathering we have together, I'm going to leave you with an idea and a practical exercise which I want you to have achieved by tomorrow night in discussion with your spouse or maybe even with your family. So if we look at what the Ramban says at the end of Parshas Boy, so it was just recently the Jews came out from Egypt, we're reading about it. And the commentary of the Ramban, here's something very, very important. End of Parshas Boy says, okay, Yomer Kosev B'Moisim Laman Teda Ki Ani Hashem. He says that the miracles I'm about to do in Egypt is in order you'll know, not believe, you will know, you'll be certain, Ki Ani Hashem B'Keref HaOretz. I am Hashem, and I control events in this world. And he expands on the idea that Avodah Zarah started from a very clever distortion of the truth. It's called a Frum Yetzer Hara. When the Yetzer Hara comes and tells you that a bad idea is actually a good idea, in fact, it's a mitzvah. And the idea went like this: do you really have the audacity, the chutzpah to imagine that you amoeba, you virus, you nothing, that Hashem is interested in you? No, he set the planets and stars up in heaven to control events in this world. And Hashem is another part of the galaxy doing what Hashem does best, whatever that is. But we are here. He's not interested individually in us. Well, the going out from Egypt showed that he was. He controls every aspect of the universe at all times, and he is there and is interested in us. That was proven to us when we went out from Egypt. And then he says this, and since God doesn't do those big Hollywood production miracles of splitting the Red Sea, perhaps into 12 different channels for each of the tribes to come through, with the Egyptians and the incredible insanity and stupidity chasing after us when glug, 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 yiskadahu, yiskadash is the obvious consequence. Lenny call Rosh Call Kuiper. He doesn't do that standard, that level of miracle to everybody at any time. He tells us to have in mind all the time the fact that he does do stuff, he does control the world. And then jumping to the last paragraph, he says this. And from the big miracles that we saw in Egypt, that we experienced in Egypt, all of us experienced, which are famous. Adam Moiden, a person learns to extrapolate from that, but Nisim and Nistorim, the hidden miracles, not the big open miracles, the hidden miracles, and then listen to these three words. Shehem, Yesod Torah, Kulu. Trick question. 4 words. That this is the fundamental of the Torah. That little miracles happen to us in our life. We don't believe in blind faith. We believe that Hashem promised us that 2 things. I'll do big miracles and get you out of Egypt, which he did. He kept that promise. And that's a blueprint for everything else that comes after that. The little miracles that happen all the time. And again, the words are, Shehem Yesod HaTorah Kula. But that's the fundamental of Judaism. It's not a question of faith or blind faith, is a question of certainty, and the evidence of that certainty is a continuation from the story of Egypt, and you can see it every day. And we say that in the Shemona Esra every day as well. And the miracles that happen to us all the time. I'll read a little bit further here. A person simply fails to be a member of the club, of the Betochen club, of the Jewish people who are the Betochen club, until you believe in everything that happens to in your life and every event that happens to and occurs to us in our existence, that nothing in them is scientific, external to God, from God's control, as they argued when they said we should not forget about God controlling the world. He's elsewhere. No, he is here. Everything that happens to us in our life is a continuation of that. The big miracle from Egypt, which certainly brought us to certainty, that certainty carries on and can carry on at every single moment in our life. So our 15 minutes are up. So I want to leave you with a challenge. And it's a challenge you have to actually do straight away, because whenever somebody says do this, you get distracted. But this is quite simple, but it'll take 10 minutes. Sit down with your spouse now and say to yourself at this, what miracles did I see today? Or to make it easier, what miracles happened to you in your life? When it's clearly a miracle. I mean, not a miracle like Egypt. That's big, big stuff. But where you really were quite convinced that Hashem was in your life. I have got so many, but as I speak for a living, you know, I've got a mind that files all these away. I was doing a Shaar HaBetochon with Hasidim, a Hasidic group over Shabbos, and I mentioned one of them, which was when one of my son, if you've ever heard my Shiurim, I told you, I'm sure, the story about my son and how his sight, which was leaving him, and he was going to be blind, was saved by a doctor. My first ever Talmud, whom he happened to be sitting beside in the plane. Or the time I was in a plane crash and survived, or a car wreck and survived, or but much more, maybe not as dramatic as that. I've got so many, and I bet you have too, because we say, Ani Sekos, we call Yom Imonu, all of us. This applies to all of us. That builds certainty. And this whole process of Shaar HaBetochon and building a relationship with God is, maybe it's a lifetime's work, but here's a good place to start. When we come to an event like this coronavirus, when the world literally is falling to bits, every fabric of the world is falling to bits, then that's the time that the words of Shaar HaBetochon in the Psicha, in his introduction to what he's talking about, come to life with amazing vibrancy. That only person you can really trust is Hashem. And you've got to know that Betochon is the ultimate relationship that you have. And maybe the whole thing is just to refresh us of that memory and that knowledge. We have to build that. Now, this is just a start. But for tomorrow night, make a list. I want you to maybe send a couple. You can send messages here or email me, yy@rabbiyyy.com, of things like this that happen to you in your life. What coincidences, as they say, unbelievable things that just, we all have them. It's not a question of blind faith. Betochon is certainty, building a relationship where you know God controls the whole world, and you don't have to wait for a coronavirus to have a very scary reminder of that fact. Of course, if you already know, you don't need reminded at all, and coronavirus, I suppose, could easily go away. Anyway, I shall see you next week, tomorrow night. Just a little 15-minute reminder, but it's got to become real. This has got to be real to us. It's not just a share and listening to me making a joke or two. It's got to be real. So to make it real, make sure you've made that list by tomorrow night, that you can say to yourself, oh yeah, what's that? Oh gosh, no, that's what. You got to know he's there, but not through a coronavirus. See you tomorrow night.